Are you looking to leverage the latest and best ideas to grow your advisory business from the best minds in the industry? Join us every Wednesday at noon Pacific for our speaker series, featuring dynamic guests sharing real strategies for real results. Brought to you by The Best Notary, where we help estate planning attorneys grow their business with less stress and more success.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Best Notary Speaker Series. Today's guest is Jadah Sellner, and she'll be talking about the anti-hustle business model, a spacious path to sustainable success. This series is all about connection and about highlighting trusted advisors in the professional services space. The host of today's event is the Best Notary, and here to introduce our speaker is Stephanie. Before we begin, quick few reminders. This presentation is being recorded. The recording will be available later on YouTube. We'll be collecting questions in the chat for Q&A session with Jadah at the end. And I think at this point, I will hand it over to Stephanie to introduce Jadah.
Thank you, Eli. Welcome, Jadah. So Jadah is a best-selling author and business mentor, international keynote speaker. She's passionate about helping women entrepreneurs build sustainable businesses through her She Builds Collective and the Lead with Love podcast. She's also the author of She Builds, the anti-hustle guide to grow your business and nourish your life, and co-author of Simple Green Smoothies, a wellness brand that grew to a community of over 1 million followers. Jadah's work has been featured on the Oprah magazine, Forbes, the Wall Street Journal, and on the Doctor's TV show. She has shared her message on stage across the U.S. internationally through the Domination Summit, TEDx, Santo Domingo, and corporate leadership events, and audiences and inspiring audiences to lead with love in business and life. So Jadah believes that love is a business strategy. When she's not speaking or mentoring with visionary founders, you can find her playing bananagrams, which I'm so curious to hear more about, sipping chai lattes by the fireplace, or spending time with her husband, her daughter, and their dog Beasley, named after Pam Beasley from The Office. She lives in the Bay Area. So, Jadah, I don't think you know this. I asked you to be here today. When I found you, I had just recovered from spine surgery. It turns out that the body is not designed to sit at a computer for 18, 20 hours a day, and my body gave out. And I was recovering from spine surgery and trying to figure out this is not sustainable in life. And I had also just been demoted at my position at a major hospital in the Bay Area after 20 years of service. And I was trying to think about, what do I do from here? And something has to give. And literally my back gave out. And so I got the chance to get your book and to go to one of your workshops, and was incredibly moved by the community that you're building, and what you were doing really spoke to me. So that is why I asked you to spend some time with us, because I feel like there's so much to learn from your wisdom. I think I made some mistakes along the way. And as I move forward, I think many of us could learn from your wisdom. So with that, welcome, Jadah. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing that story. And I always say that building a business that compromises our health and relationships is not a sustainable business model. And so you got the lesson and you pivoted to really rebuild in a way that works for your body, your health, your relationships. So I'm really excited to share with the community today. I'll be sharing my slides, but also opening up for anyone who's live and has a question. Also for all of you, I'm always open and just love to be an open book, and also put on my coach's hat of being able to help people kind of move to that next level in a way that just feels sustainable. So I'm going to share my screen. So as I play Zoom DJ, and let's see here. Okay, perfect. There we go. All right. So as we shared that I am going to be talking about the anti-hustle business model and really that how do we create that spacious path to sustainable success and being able to build on our own terms, especially in seasons of chaos and uncertainty and everything that's going on in the world. How do we ground and root ourselves so that we can stay in for the long game? And I've been an entrepreneur for over 16 years. And my daughter is 18 years old, so was a toddler when I started my first business, and very many pivots along the way too. So I just want to, for wherever you are in this season, if the business that you're doing right now is part of a intentional pivot or maybe a forced pivot like Stephanie, right? To really give ourselves grace in these seasons. And sometimes we have to pull back. And I always say that we're not hiding, we're healing. And so for me, this is our invitation to really reimagine what it means to have success in a sustainable way. So let's get it going. And obviously this is, really designed for folks who are seasoned entrepreneurs, creative CEOs, visionary leaders, and sometimes we're entrepreneurs within a company, right? And really being able to have a business model. And sometimes we find out we're in a model that's working and it looks very successful on the outside, but it's actually not working on the inside and how you're feeling in delivering your services. And so we want to make a shift to that. And so we've got to kind of stop that hustle hamster wheel, right? So I want to share kind of some of the things that this one specific number, and I talk about it in my book, She Builds, that Stephanie mentioned, but how my clients increase income without adding more busy work to their plate, because sometimes that's what we get caught in. And the number one reason why you might feel guilty, right? When you stop working, it's like sometimes we're working and then we're thinking about our family, our loved ones, all the things that need to be done at home. And then when we're at home, we're thinking about our work, right? So we're actually never feeling a sense of peace in our body of work because we're feeling that like guilty kind of, where do I put my attention? And then how do we build those organized, sustainable systems so that you don't stress out and also burn out, not just yourself, but your team? And Stephanie and Eli were telling me about their global team and just like, how do we love up on those folks so they are able, that we're not just building sustainable businesses for ourselves, but the whole ecosystem of support I really care about, that everyone is taken care of in the equation. And when we move out of that space of hustle and stop hustling, then we can start to be more present and attuned to what's right in front of us. And how do we tap back into our creativity and joy? Because with burnout can also come boredom or uncertainty, lack of clarity. And so we start to lose kind of like our why, our motivation on why we started in the first place. And so we want to be able to tap back into our creativity and joy without leaving money on the table. It feels like, well, if I have fun, then I don't get to make money. If I make money, right? So it's like this constant just like pull and tug and tension for us. And then what's the support system that my clients, 6-7-figure clients, use to unlock that next level of revenue growth and increase profits? And many times, so often we're chasing like the high level number of like the revenue, but also profit matters. And also I have this like superpower of unlocking like an additional 6 figures in revenue in people's companies. We sometimes like miss it. We can't read the label from inside the jar, right? So being able to unlock that. And then I want to share my framework, the anti-hustle business model, to how do you build that solid foundation? So you're no longer daydreaming about selling your business, shutting it down. Like we all have these fantasies of maybe I just go back to my 9 to 5. And so really being able to find that space. And my invitation for you, I know we're on Zoom and it can be really easy to be easily distracted. So my invitation right now is, if you chose to show up here in this moment, whether live or the replay, that you allow yourself to be really present right now and just turn off any notifications, noise, distractions. And then also being kind to yourself and others, right? That we can attune to the room and what we are needing moment by moment. And then also be open. Maybe I might share some things you're like, oh, I've heard that before. Or maybe there's something that you haven't and you might feel a little skepticism towards. Can you allow yourself to be open and lean into that curiosity of what is possible if you were to shift some perspectives on how you're showing up in your leadership, in your work, in the world? And my personal intention for our time together is really to help you build a sustainable business, a body of work that brings you joy, balance, and peace so that you actually enjoy what you're building and you don't feel that sense of resentment. And a question that I want to ask for those who are here is, if you ever feel like you're pulled in a lot of different directions, right? Like I'm like, we wear many hats. And so it just feels like everything is vying for our attention, or you're always feeling like you're behind and you don't have enough time and you're kind of looking at what everyone else is doing. Everyone's moving faster than you. And so just constantly feeling like I just have a to-do list that feels like a bottomless mimosa, right? That is just never ending, which kind of like it never ends. So we actually have to learn tools and strategies to be with a list that is ever growing, because we're always going to feel like we're catching up. And I'm curious if anyone's feeling like stress about your health, your money, loved ones, right? We're kind of like rotating through those things that keep us up at night. And I'm sure if you're wondering, like, am I doing enough? Am I making enough? Do I know enough? Am I enough? Right? There's that real problem of thinking that we are never doing enough. We're not making enough. And I want you to know that feeling like that of the lack of enoughness is not the real problem. The real problem is that we haven't unhooked from hustle culture. And that's what's making us think we're not doing enough, we're not making enough, because it's a standard that our society has created for us of what is deemed successful. The things that we put on the altar of success are things that are not every single person is trying to build a unicorn billion-dollar company that is actually not taking care of everyone in the world, right? We are actually people who want to make a difference in the world. We want to make an impact. We want to show up and serve our clients really, really well. And hustle culture can get in the way of that. And so once we start to shift out of operating on that hustle culture hamster wheel, then things actually start to feel different. So I'm curious if anyone is ever feeling like they are on that hustle culture hamster wheel, and it's actually hard to get off of. And I say that anti-hustle is a practice. It's not a destination. It's not an arriving to. It's actually, how do we start to practice a different way of showing up and leading in our businesses and lives, and being stuck in this hamster wheel is what's keeping us from that. And so really thinking about asking yourself, what is the cost of playing this game of hustle culture, right? For me, I know personally, my relationship, I just celebrated our 20-year wedding anniversary this summer. But because of entrepreneurship, because of hustle culture, our relationship, our marriage was definitely on that place of like, I don't have time for this, or I can't look towards this, right? Because I got to keep making money. I got to keep going, and then ignoring the things that matter the most to us, right? And so sometimes we can be that walking paradox where we're building something meaningful. And I actually did this with my company, Simple Green Smoothies, where I'm reaching millions of people and telling people to live healthy lives. And yet I'm burning out, exhausted behind the scenes, right? So we can be that walking paradox. It's not our fault. Also for me, the cost of hustle culture and feeling burnt out all the time behind the scenes is also tapping into my creativity, where I feel this dullness and I'm not as inspired and engaged. And we start to feel this apathy, right? Of just kind of the same old, like sustain, maintain, and not feeling excited. So, and also health, right? Those are things that for me, when I ask myself, what's the cost of staying in that hustle hamster wheel, that those are the things that usually will get on the cutting block for me. So thinking about for yourself, what is the cost of performing and overproducing, being productive 24/7 actually costing you? And is it costing you things that you actually value and care about? Because then it's actually taking you further away from why you started your business in the first place. So once we start to make the shift out of hustle culture into building in a way where we're actually leading and building with love, things start to shift. And I've seen it in my clients. I've been a business coach for over a decade now. And when we start to practice and do things and build in a different way, then your money worries actually don't keep you up at night anymore. There's a sense of trust, but also clarity of like, what are my money needs? What is enough to sustain my business, sustain my team, and sustain my own life? and really taking into the equation while still serving your clients, you'll finally be able to unplug from work. I have so many clients, they come to me, they're working nights, they're working weekends, they can't close their laptop, and now they have increased their profits, but they are also able to close their laptop at 4 p.m., volunteer in their kids' classrooms. Like there's such a shift when we start to do things differently. And then you're able to be fully present in what's right in front of you, right? So when it's time to work, that's your work time, and you're not worried or feeling guilty about your family and the to-dos at home, and vice versa. And also you'll start to feel more confident in your vision and your plan, which I'm going to talk about today too, right? Because sometimes we may have a vision, a goal, and then we reach them, and then we're like, now what? What happens is we tend to just keep moving the goalposts further and further ahead of us. And so we want to ground you in your capacity and your energy. And also when you start to shift out of hustle culture, you'll feel more grounded and less anxious, which is kind of like how we want to feel, right? That sense of peace and balance, and also more calm and safe in your nervous system. Stephanie got to experience coming to my creative studio in Lafayette, California, where I lead sacred business circles. And it's really about coming into community, co-regulating with each other. So we actually can't vision and dream to the next level when we are dysregulated. And so we need tools of nourishment. We need community to lean on to truly sustain ourselves. I love this little meme. I'm a meme collector, just so you know, but I wasn't made to hustle and grind. I was born to dilly and dally, right? So how can we move out of the hustle and grind and give ourselves some more spaciousness to that sustainable path of success? And as Stephanie already introduced me, I always like to remind people that my name is Jadah and it rhymes with Prada. So I'm like, you have a 50-50 chance. It's either Jadah or Jadah. It is Jadah, like Prada. And as Stephanie already said, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And for me, I'm so passionate about helping visionary leaders build anti-hustle businesses. And my intention for you is just, I want you to build in a different way so that you do feel that sense of joy and balance and peace in your business, but also in your life. And as Stephanie mentioned, I've been featured in Forbes. Simple Green Smoothies just turned 10 years old, which is wild to me. We have over 1,800 five-star reviews. She Builds will turn 3 this month. So I'm just so passionate about really allowing what I've learned and being an entrepreneur for over 16 years of how we can start to shift and do things in a different way. And I like to share this story. We had a 1995 Toyota Corolla, which we called Joe Boo. It was a hoopty, for those who know that terminology. And my husband and I, when you open the book in She Builds, I actually share one of our biggest fights in our marriage when we had started our first company, Little Sprouts Playhouse, on the island of Kauai. And he's like on the car, we're fighting over money that we don't have. And I like to share this because so often when I'm leading and teaching, we're sharing the highlight reel of like published book, 1 million followers, that $1 million, this. And it's like, just to know that I'm coming from a space of humble beginnings where we actually had to move into our brick and mortar business with our 18-month-old daughter and like try to make ends meet. So we were actually living in our playhouse. We had to like move out of our other place because we couldn't afford both. And that is really the kind of the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, right? There's going to be highs, but there's also going to be lows where things are going to be hard. And I think in this moment, especially with the economy and just the politics and all of these things that are at our attention and our nervous systems, is that we have to remind ourselves of our resourcefulness and our resilience, and to be able to trust that we can rebuild again if things have gone off track in any way. So I always just like to kind of share where I've started on my own entrepreneurship journey. The first business was successful on the outside, but it wasn't feeling great on the inside. We weren't making enough money, and actually shut our Little Sprouts Playhouse down, moved from Kauai back to California with my husband's parents, like living with your in-laws as a grown adult with your own kids. It's like hashtag worst case scenario. And I survived and we rebuilt. And I always like to say that sometimes we're a startup and sometimes we're a restart up. And I really feel that with the speed of AI and technology and all of these shifts that we have to kind of get ourselves back into that startup mentality, even if you've been in business for a long time. So I always just like to share kind of like the journey of my entrepreneurship journey, that there are those ups and those downs in the business. And I sold my company, Simple Green Smoothies, in 2016. Then we had the great blip in 2020, 2022, where we're like, we don't know what's happening. But from those moments, if you start to look at your own timeline, that you will see like something can be built from that place. And during that blip, that time in the pandemic, I was able to write my book, She Builds, the Anti-Hustle Guide to Grow Your Business and Nourish Your Life. So like I said, sometimes you're a startup and sometimes you're a restartup. And for those that are listening live, I'm curious for you, are you in a startup season or are you in a restartup season? Have you had to pivot? Have you had to pull back and pause and reimagine what's next? And the best way that I know, the tools that I like to share with my clients and everything that's in She Builds book is talking about what's in the anti-hustle business model. So I'm going to go through some mindset shifts, some strategies on what you can start to embrace for yourself in your own business and your own body of work and life. So I'll kind of go through these pieces, bits and pieces of this, but this is the anti-hustle business model where we are able to sustain ourselves, support ourselves, and then we can scale up to that next level of success. But we have to be intentional in how we do it. And we also have to be able to shift our mindset on the way that we're doing it. So shift number one is to slow down. We think that like all the success comes from speed, but I just led a 3-day retreat with my the women in my high level mastermind called She Builds Collective. And everyone just was like, oh, when I slow down, when I pause to take a step back and reflect on what's going good, what's not working in my business, what shifts I can make, that's where actually the success comes from, is actually giving yourself permission to slow down. And I talk about this in She Builds, of giving yourself permission to be a slow cooker. So I always like to ask, like, if you have a slow cooker or a pressure cooker. Most people, I'm like, oh, some people are nodding like, yes, pressure cooker. So pressure cookers are great. I have one, Instant Pot, right? You put in all of your ingredients and you get a very juicy, nourishing meal in a very quick amount of time. But there's a couple things that happen with it. One, I've been very guilty to get the burn notice, right? And also, in order to get that result, the steam has to be released and it's intense, right? So there's another way that we can also explore, which is working with a slow cooker, which I actually use the slow cooker button on my pressure cooker because I just prefer it, which is a slow cooker just has a few buttons, right? It's not super complicated and you got to push all of these things. It's like, do you want this for low or high, 6 hours, 8 hours? And then you just put all the ingredients away, you put the cover on and you walk away and you let things simmer. And you still get the same result, a very juicy, nourishing meal on the other side. And so that's what I like to invite people to think about, is giving yourself permission to be a slow cooker sometimes, that we don't always have to operate in being a pressure cooker and we can still get the same results. So we can actually still feel good, step away, enjoy our lives and come back, and there will still be the results that you're wanting. So just a shift to start to examine and explore and experiment with, could I try something that is a little bit different? And for me and my team, the way that we move projects and forward and goals is burnout is not an option. Like, what if you tried that on where it's like, what if I didn't have to have the burn notice and I could just be in slow cooker mode, and allowing yourself to like, what if everyone here, like, we have goals, we have timelines, but we're not going to do it in a way that's going to burn us out in the process. So just something to explore. My question for you to think about is, what do you need to slow down? What would it take for you to actually pause and like take a beat and breathe? And for some people that can feel very nerve-wracking because we're used, that's the hustle culture. That's like the speed of productivity, but we're also tired and exhausted from that way of being. So if we want to feel different, we also have to think different. So just thinking about what is it that you would need to slow down. What I've learned from my clients who are very ambitious, very goal oriented, is they actually need the structure and the accountability to slow down, right? If someone like, hey, we're doing a retreat and there's going to be forced pauses here for us to slow down and actually start to feel it. And once we start to feel it and experience it, we're rewiring the way that we get things done. It's just that hustle culture is how we've learned from very young age, academics, all the things, right? School, it just, there's that pressure and speed. And so really, when we start to slow down in the anti-hustle business model, then we start to honor our energy, our capacity, right? And we actually increase our clarity and get out of the overwhelm when we give ourselves permission to slow down and actually honor our capacity and true output to get things done. Shift number 2 is breaking the fear cycle. So fear, I have an acronym. It's FEAR. The first one is forcing, where you're kind of, oh, like, I got to push, I got to make it happen. Let's go. But because you're feeling so behind and you're always feeling like I need to catch up. So I'm curious for you, it's like, hey, is that a place that you hang out, is in that seat of forcing, like, just keep pushing, we got to go, we said it's going to happen, or exhaustion, right? So when we start to force, what happens, because we're in that go, go, go mentality, then we get tired because you're wearing all the hats and you're doing everything on your own and you're not delegating because you're like, I can do it faster, just let me do it, right? And so that leads to exhaustion and like hiding out under the covers, right? And when we get exhausted, then we move into avoidance. So then the to-do list can start to build up, right? And you're kind of avoiding and you're like, I've got so many ideas, I don't know which thing to do. I'm like focused in so many different places. And so when your list is long and you lack clarity, you will end up in that avoidance. And then there's rigidity. And this is like, I made a plan, I said this date, it's going to get done in this time, and we give ourselves no breathing room or flexibility to adjust the timeline. And I say, don't put a timeline on your dreams, put a timeline on your actions, but you can extend the timeline if it means you'll sustain yourself in the process. So as you look at the fear cycle of like seeing, where do you hang out the most? I know for me, I'm actually most guilty to hang out in avoidance. So I'll get real stuck, real overwhelmed, and I will just not move. I'll play Rummy Cube. So it's Bananagrams, it's Rummy Cube right now, Stephanie, that I'm totally geeking out on. But I will just get caught in that space, right, of like just kind of I'm in freeze mode. And so for those of you just kind of thinking about when I'm in that fear cycle, where do I get stuck the most? Because some people are like power through, right? So kind of thinking about where is that for you? And some people might be like, it's all of them, or it's 2 of them, right? So thinking about forcing, exhaustion, avoidance, rigidity, which one of these do you hang out in? And then what's the shift that we need to make? So I always talk about this of like, I have watched 8 hours in one shift, one seating of Bridgerton, as if it was 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And I just say, the Duke made me do it. It is also okay for you to also numb out or use coping strategies as well. Like, I think hustle culture also is like the 5 a.m. club, right? Or like, you can't watch these shows and get things done. And I will just say, you can binge watch shows and you can soothe yourself and you can take the foot off the pedal and still get the results that you want. Hustle culture will make us think that we cannot live typical lives and still be able to reach our goals and our dreams. And I just want to say, you can. And then to shift out of fear of forcing, exhaustion, avoidance, rigidity, we want to move into building with love. And this is actually how I designed my book in these 4 parts of lead, optimize, visualize, and expand. So we want to shift from fear to love in how we show up in our leadership, in our businesses, and our lives. So I'm curious for you, are you leading with intention in your business, in your life? Or are you kind of just following where the wind takes you and being very reactionary? This is a part of the anti-hustle business model that if we want to get into that season of scale and growth, we actually have to be intentional with our leadership and how we show up and serve, and not from that place of fear and scarcity, but actually really in trust and love and abundance. Shift number 3 is defining enough. And right, I talked about this at the top around hustle culture. This is another meme that I love. For only $10.99, you can let every visitor to your house know you are struggling. I am enough, I am enough, I am enough, I am enough, right? But we actually do need to define what is enough in this season of our lives. And so often when I work with visionary leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and founders, is it will be wild to me that they actually sometimes don't have clarity around what is enough. And that is actually what gets us stuck in moving that goalpost forward, right? So it's like, okay, got this carrot stick. I just got to keep going, because you actually don't know where the stop point is. And when you get there, you just create a new problem, a new goal. And so you never get to actually enjoy your life, enjoy your business, enjoy leading your team and taking care of your team, right? And so we actually have to get clear on some very specific numbers for our business and our lives. So I always talk about love over metrics. We want to know the meaning behind the metrics. So when you say, I want to make $50,000, $100,000, $1 million, an 8-figure business, what's the meaning behind those metrics? Do you know, does the money have a job? Do you know what it's going to do? And the way that we figure that out is actually knowing your enough number of what is going to sustain you in your life. So thinking about the fixed personal expenses, variable personal expenses, investments, taxes, what do you need to sustain yourself? What do you need to take home to sustain yourself? And then what's the cost of running your business and taking care of your team and taking care of your clients and your customers? When you put those numbers together, then you can start to create a revenue goal of where you're going. But so often, many of my clients, there's people who will have multiple 7-figure businesses and still feel like they don't know what their enough number is. So they'll keep building, keep growing, and also not even paying themselves. So we've got to shift that everyone needs to be taken care of in the equation. So my question for you is, do you know your enough number? Do you know what it costs to sustain your personal life? Do you know what it costs to sustain your business? And of course, you can have stretch goals and expansion numbers, but if we know our enough number, this is where we're actually able to take our foot off the pedal and get off of hustle culture, because it's like, you know what, team? We don't have to 10x this year or 20x, or we can actually sustain and just slow down a bit and reimagine what we want to build next. Or if you're in a season of grief or caregiving for young ones or elders, or your own chronic illness or anything like that, that when you know your enough number, then you can figure out, actually, we can slow down. I've coached many of my clients to take sabbaticals. It's like, you have enough. Let's just take a beat and reimagine what's next, right? So when we know our enough number, right, in the anti-hustle business model, then we get out of that comparison trap of just creating a number out of thin air that you heard someone else say is successful, because sometimes your enough number might be actually a lot lower than you even knew if you did the math and ran the numbers. And then once you know what it takes to sustain your business and know that revenue goal, then you know the products and the marketing and things, and you're not spreading yourself then trying to do so much because there's no clarity and no focus. So we want to really define what is enough. Shift number 4 is nourish your life. So in my business, it's called the Anti-Hustle Guide to Grow Your Business and Nourish Your Life, right? So yes, we want growth. We want to make money, because if you don't make money, then you just have a hobby, not a business. But I truly believe that building sustainably requires self-care as a business strategy. It's actually on my clients, their visionary action plans. We've got our quarterly strategic projects and goals that we're working on. We've got our action steps. And I also have on there, what's your self-care menu that's going to sustain you in this season as you move these goals forward. So asking yourself some questions to think about when you feel depleted: what activities and people nourish you? So starting to figure out, who are those people? What current habits, practices, or rituals do you already do that fill you up? And you can just be like, okay, that's part of my self-care menu. And if you had a full day for pure relaxation, how would you want to spend it, right? So sometimes if you're like, I don't even know what I like to do, if you had a full day, what would you do? And I like, when I'm building out my self-care menu, I like to think of it in these like little micro bites. What are things that I can do in 5 minutes? So say I'm in between client calls, I can step out into the sunshine and get some vitamin D, right? Or for 15 minutes, I could set my timer and take a quick cat nap. 50 minutes, I could go take a dance class, I could get a massage, I could do a hike, right? Like, so kind of thinking of these micro bits of based on time, because we do know time is limited, but just a way to think about how to build your self-care menu as you're building out your goals and your projects for your businesses. So what do you need to feel nourished? So just taking a moment to reflect and think, if I were to fill my self-care menu, what do I need to feel nourished? And I like to look at it as a menu versus like this, again, the 5 a.m. club, which is like do a million self-care things within 90 minutes when you first wake up. And yes, that is one pathway, but it is not the only way. Sometimes we just need a menu of things that we can pull from. So from the anti-hustle business model, right, when we're talking about self-care menu, we're starting to fill the bucket around replenish, right? Tools to actually regulate yourself so you don't feel so exhausted. I have a client that's doing a launch right now, and she was resisting some marketing materials that her and her team needed to create. And we just kind of released the guilt, the attachment of like, have to do it. And then she went and did some nourishing things. And then she had the energy again, right? So it's actually, the more we take care of this ourselves, the more energy and capacity that we have to actually do more. But because of hustle culture, we think we just have to keep doing go, go, go. Don't take care of ourselves in the process. And that's where the burnout happens. So how do we do both at the same time to sustain ourselves? And then the last shift is to invest in support for yourself, and really thinking about, for me, the way I think about it is like holistic support. There is a whole person behind the business that we are building, right? And so really honoring that. One more meme for y'all is, how is it possible that I want to do so many things and travel the world, but I'm trapped in the body of someone who just wants to sleep 24/7? So to me, having support systems in place actually allow us to hold the range of when we are feeling exhausted or feeling like there's so many ideas, we actually need that support system outside of ourselves. And I actually looked up the definition of resourced, because I just think, being resourceful and being able to be in that restartup state of mind, and also resilient, but allowing ourselves to be resourced where we allow ourselves to receive support. Because there's one thing to be like, yes, there's support out there, but actually to receive it, I think so many of us who lead with love are actually very generous and support a lot of other people and forget to receive support for ourselves. And so the definition of resource is a source of supply, support, or aid, especially one that can be readily drawn upon when needed. Our natural go-to is like, we'll get the support when we are in crisis. And I will say that the difference of the clients of mine that are building without burning out is they have the support in place all along the way before they're in crisis, so that we're not always just fixing like this moment and that urgency. We're actually having a sustainable support system at all times. And as I mentioned, you can't read the label from inside the jar, right? So everything you're like seeing, and other people can actually see what you can't see, some of those hidden unconscious blocks and patterns, and like, oh, I didn't think of that, right? Of being able to have that. So allowing yourself to be supported in a safe space, right? Where your nervous system feels safe. I feel like safety is such an important word in this moment and this climate, because we can get into rooms of support and our nervous system feels like fight or flight, right? Or like the teacher or the mentor or something isn't resonating. So really paying attention to what feels safe, because when you feel safe, that's when you can step into that next level of growth. And so I talk about this of elevating your leadership with a support squad that can help you move through obstacles, that can get you to desired outcomes, and make big decisions about opportunities that are in front of you. The way that I do that is through one-on-one mentorship, community, really having like a mastermind of community of people that you can lean on to get that feedback and that support, and then having a strategic plan. So it's not all like woo and love and all of this, but we actually have to be strategic of like, what is the focus for the next 3 months? What is the focus for the next 12 months? Knowing that there's fluidity and flexibility to pivot as we get information and insight. So every quarter that I meet with my clients, this is what we're working on, right? As I said, the self-care menu is a part of your strategic plan. So do you have those pieces in place of like, where am I going and what are the projects, the initiatives, the priorities that are going to get me to my goals? And for me, I just think the most holistic way to do that is having your own support squad, which is having kind of the trifecta of like a mastermind community, mindset support to kind of unlock some of the emotional blocks that might hold you back, the resistance when you get caught in forcing or avoidance or exhaustion or rigidity, and then the mentorship, working on that strategy and that next level to get you to sustainable success. So to me, when you have all these three pieces in place, because sometimes we go all in on one, but when you have all three in place, I feel that is where you get to that sustainable success in a more spacious way. And to me, I believe it is the anti-hustle way, right? And I'll give you a few examples of some of my clients that I'm still working with. But I have one client who has an e-commerce business, and she has a multiple seven-figure company. And when we first started working, she was overworked and exhausted. And she was just really struggling to one of those people that couldn't close the laptop. And in our work together, she's doubled her net profit. So she didn't even have to increase her top line revenue. She was able to increase her profit, and she was no longer snappy with her husband, and also working less in her busy season because she has a kind of a winter-based clothing line. And so she's very high on, and I actually just had a call with her yesterday. I'm like, you sound so different, so grounded, so resourced, taking care of yourself, sound baths, yoga, like all like actually taking more care of herself and now she has a team to support her, right? So being able to shift in some of that. I have another client, Amber Ray. She's a 3 times, actually I think she's 4 times published author now, but took a space to like step back and created more space to launch a new offer that she had never put out in the world, 6-figure offer, and was able to have a baby, write her 4th book, right? Like leaning into that support system of coming to retreats and being able to pause and slow down. Another one of my clients, Lakita, who's in my She Builds Collective mastermind, she needed to make a pivot and like move in a new direction. And sometimes we are in that pivot season. And she was able to build working for Amazon in the HR department, quitting that, working with me and being able to build a 500K plus consulting around HR on her own. So when we are leaning into that support system, we're able to do things a little bit differently. I have an art studio owner, Jessica, and she just didn't have systems or team, was just doing everything herself and being able to help her lean into her team. Now she enjoys in her busiest season in her studio in the summer, where she's taking several weeks off to be with her family and be present, and has had her biggest, like a 6-figure day, I think this year in January. It's just, when you really lean into the support system and the anti-hustle way of building and building differently, then you can start to unlock, how do we do this in a sustainable way? So my question for you is really thinking about, what do you need to feel supported in this season of your business and life? And so just taking a moment to really think about that, right? When I'm talking about the support squad of the mindset, the mentorship, the mastermind, what areas are you already feeling supported? And then what areas might you want to lean into in this season of growth? So when we do that, right, in the anti-hustle business model, we lean into our support squad and invest in that support. That's where you're able to really have that community and not feel so isolated. how many of you like feel isolated? It was like, oh, I'm just on my computer doing all of my things. And we can really shift that when we are in community. So just to remind you all, my intention today was to really, how do you build that business, sustainable business that brings you more joy, balance, and peace? I've done it for myself in my own business, but I've also really supported my clients in being able to make those shifts. So I just wanted to share some of those shifts with you today, right? Of how to embrace that anti-hustle mindset and giving yourself permission to slow down, and how do you really lean into vision and planning where you're not getting stuck in the fear cycle, but also building in the self-care menu while you're reaching your goals and your priorities, defining your enough number so you're not overworking and resenting your business, and then nourishing your life, right? Being able to use self-care as a business strategy. And then the power of investing in support, right? When we find the right mentorship, the community that aligns with your values, like everything feels like possible, right? Being able to expand into that season of growth. So really thinking about for you in this season, if you're thinking about, if I'm to lean into an anti-hustle business model, what is it that I need to thrive in this season? And for anyone, if you're wanting like to get a little bit more details about the anti-hustle business or like assessment, like I love doing this with folks, feel free to reach out to me at jadahtsellner.com. And then I would just love to open it up to you, Stephanie, just thinking about that, but also if anyone's like looking at the anti-hustle business model, what areas do you feel like you need the most support when it comes to strategy, revenue, growth, replenish, team, community, time, energy, money, as I've kind of shared some of those shifts that you might make of really thinking about that. And I'd love to just end with my favorite African proverb. This is a paraphrase. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Thank you, Jadah, so much. I did not want to interrupt your flow. I had so many thoughts and questions and things and ahas. So first, I just want to thank you. And I think my first question, so the challenge is that we are not in a vacuum and that other people are in the hamster wheel, right? And we have clients who are like, this is really important and this has to happen now. And I guess because we can't just put everything on pause and take a moment to step back. That's not, it's one thing if you're starting a business, I think you can do that differently with intention. But if you're already in the middle of a very busy business of many team members, what do you feel like are the first baby steps? What are the first steps, do you feel like, to embracing this mindset and this approach?
Can I ask you an additional question
Absolutely.
around that? Because I think it's interesting, right? That it feels like a startup person could slow down and pause, but actually they don't feel that either. But I'm curious where the resistance is, where it feels like I cannot pause, I cannot step away. I want to understand that first, and then I can kind of
I need to
explore that.
have revenue coming in. I need to take care of the clients that we currently have. There's a calendar of events. There's a calendar of things that need to happen. There are staff that need things. There are emails coming in. There's a constant, you know, I will say at TBN, we've tried to not have other people's fires become our emergencies a little bit, right? So we've put in some timelines of like, we need things at a certain amount of time so that it's
Yeah,
not like emergency, but we have a running business and
yeah,
we have deadlines and things, and people that we want to take care of. And
yeah,
so taking, let's just close down for a week, or whatever.
yeah. Great.
Feels right. Like how would
How?
one?
Totally. Yeah. Okay, great. So there's a couple of baby steps or things that you can explore. The first thing I usually do with my clients, and we revisit this often, and I talk about this in chapter 6 of the book, just so you know, you can get She Builds at a library. It's also on Audible, audio listening, and things like that. Everything that I do with my clients in coaching is every exercise, every strategy is in She Builds. So
that's one of the things I was going to say, is that you have so many workbooks and like exercises that it's, I think, reading it and then going back and like doing the exercises. So it's more than just a storybook.
Totally. And I really was intentional about that, because when I was an entrepreneur, right, I was negative $42,000 in credit card debt, a new mom, being Black, Chinese, white, no college degree, like just felt like all odds were stacked against me. So I really wanted to create a book, especially that was written by a woman of color, because every business book I read was written by white guys who are college educated and didn't have kids, no caregiving responsibilities. And so I wanted to put everything in the book that I do for my clients who might have 6-figure, 7-figure companies, to make what I do accessible. And so I want to share that, that not everyone needs to coach or work with me in that way. But one of the first things that I do is just have you do a time audit. So chapter 6, reclaim your time and energy. So actually just track your week, everything you do from personal to professional, and even having like team members do this as well. Like I coach my clients, their leadership team, because they can start to burn out too. It's like, oh, getting everything off my plate. And now your team is the one that's holding all of the crunchiness. And so auditing your time, and then building out a weekly or a monthly workflow, depending on your style of output, like if you have themes kind of on a monthly rotation versus weekly. But when we do the weekly workflow, we actually start to see that we have more time than we think. And there's such resistance to doing this exercise, because it's like, I need to do this for 7 days. But the same thing that if you were like working with a nutritionist, right, that they'd be like, what are you eating? Do your food log. And there's not about judgment. It's just like, what's here? What are we doing? And you will find like the sneaky little things of like, oh, you just start to see where there is time, and also starting to create themes where you start to block out your days. So it's like, okay, money Mondays, that's when I work on like my finances, and anything that's like a profitable priority that we like work on our lead gen or those type of thing, or proposals. And then maybe Wednesdays, you're like kind of for me, Wednesdays would be like my deep work day. I don't have any calls on Wednesday. That's when I go co-work with some friends and get some stuff done. So if you start to look at, well, how am I spending my time now? And then could I restructure my week in a way that is more thematic, so I'm not context switching and putting fires out? And then the thing that's coming up for me is boundaries, right? So how do we communicate boundaries across the team of like, no, maybe you can't step away from a week, but maybe it's like I respond to so some things that my clients will have in the email signature line, I respond to emails at 10 a.m. and at 4 p.m. Right. So then we kind of, how do we start to remove urgency and teach people how we move through the world versus always being reactionary? Yes, we will reply to you within 24 hours, but we're not going to reply to you within 2 minutes, right? Like there's like things that you can start to put in place. And also an autoresponder when you do step away. So when my clients come to my retreats, I'm like, okay, write your out of office email so that you don't feel like you have to respond. Sometimes that email is not for the people who are emailing you. It's for you to not respond, because no one's expecting it from you but you. So sometimes you have to like make a public declaration so that you can adhere to the policy to honor that spaciousness and time away. And my clients resist. Like my collective retreats are 3 days long. They have to get on planes, trains, all the things to get to them. But once they come, they're like, oh, I can breathe again. Oh, I can think more strategically about my business, of what am I focusing on, and not trying to do so many things at one time, or to see like something's not working anymore. So as much as you think that taking a day off or 2 hours off or a week off is like impossible, if we communicate boundaries to our clients, to our team, we could take that time off, and actually you'll make more money when you take a step back to actually to think about what needs to be done in the direction you need to move.
I appreciate that. I got to spend, I think it was 2 hours or so, and it was at a like really terrible time and like all the things happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something so grounding and so like getting my nervous system calmed down that you can think clearer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
When we're in panic, and we're in fight or flight, we can't think as strategically, as creatively. And so even, a few hours here and there.
yeah.
I love the 5 minutes, the 15 minutes. We're running out of time. This was so wonderful. I want to see if anyone else had any questions. Eli had a question at the very beginning, maybe rhetorical, but it may not be,
Mhm.
that he said, I wonder if hustle culture is another way to describe extractive late stage capitalism.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, Eli. For sure. And that's the part where we have to shift to building with love, where everybody's winning in the equation. Because what happens is we're building from that capitalistic place, and it's extracting labor from the person who's running the business, the team who's running the business, the clients who are receiving the service, right? And so we actually have to step back to like, what are our values? And it might be, and also parts of capitalism, like we do want to make money because we need to sustain ourselves and live in this society. So we can't pull fully away from it, but we can do things differently so that we don't feel exhausted and depleted from our work, and neither do our clients. Like I just feel like there's an opportunity where everyone in the equation of the business, of who's receiving the service, who's delivering the service, who's leading the top line of that, we're making sure everyone's being taken care of in the equation. And so that's the shift, and that's where we have to step into intentional leadership of how do I build differently so we're not extracting, and how do we have just a more sustainable workforce in general. I'm sure my body of work I'll probably want to, I mean, I've done a little bit of getting into some more like corporate spaces, community colleges and different places. But I'm like, tech, I'm coming for you next, like, because it's just like, we're just kind of reinventing the wheel of that extractic space. And it's not good for anyone. It's just like, oh, you're dispensable, bye. Like, we've got to like find another way, because actually it costs more money to keep getting more talent. And so how do we retain our teams and the people versus just thinking everyone is just a number? And so that's where that love of our metrics comes into place. It doesn't mean that metrics don't matter, because in a business you do need money. Otherwise your CPA or your bookkeeper is going to be like, we don't have a business anymore, we can't keep writing this off tax wise, right? So we do need to make money, we do need to lean into some parts of that, but we can do it differently. Does that speak
Yeah,
to, Eli, what you're asking? Or
yeah, no, it totally does, right? It's a hybrid. It's the both and.
Mhm.
And my question for you is, how does one create a culture of documentation? I mean, you talk about
Mhm.
selling a business. I've been very fortunate to also understand how M&A works. And, with a business is essentially the systems, right? It's the
Yeah,
documented practices that allow, right, new members to come on board and execute, right? And that's what creates the profit. So my question is, how does one create a culture that prioritizes? Because I think it's very counterintuitive for most people to systematize everything they do as part of like how the company runs. So I'm curious about
yeah.
your thoughts about that and how that works with your
Yeah, I do.
framework of looking at
Yeah, I do talk about that, about systems in the book. And I think systems are important. And to most visionary leaders, it's not very sexy for them to work on. But for those who are on the ops side of things, it's like, let's get these systems in place. And I think systems are important. It also helps you not be so attached if a team member is like in their completion season in the business, that you don't feel like you're like holding on to someone who's maybe not the right fit, or they have another opportunity to move on to. My process when I'm doing it or working with my clients, I like to co-create systems. So say you're bringing on a new team member, that they're helping you kind of create those SOPs, right? The standard operating procedures of how the company is run. Like, you actually pull them into, if you don't have a system that's created, you help them co-create that with you. So they're learning the system and they're documenting it at the same time, and then being able to have a place where those live, right? There's software like Sweet Process, or you could just use Google Docs or Dropbox. Like, it's, the tool doesn't matter, but I do think systemizing creates efficiency in a business, and it also releases some of that attachment that, like, if this person were to ever leave, I don't know how to do this thing. So, and me being a very big, like, visionary creative, I actually love systems. Because when you can rinse and repeat certain parts of your business, then you get to double down in other areas of growth. So when you have those systems in place, it's like, great, we have a checklist. I can, like, pull in a new team member who's never worked in my company before and can do an event with me, knows exactly what to do, doesn't have to ask me any questions, and we can just run. And then I get to step into more of my leadership, or more into my sales body of, like, okay, great, now I get to think more big picture because systems are in place. But if we're always like, wait, what did we do? Or we have to, like, you're doing the same thing over and over again. But if you document and you make it shareable in public, and then you update, like, hey, this is when the system was last updated, someone can always kind of know that that's that. So yes, does that answer your question, Eli?
It does. And I like the part about, right, checking for fit, right, with whoever is responsible for doing that. So yeah, thank you for that. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes. It's at the Burlingame front door.
So I noticed that we're over time, and we could continue to talk with you for hours and hours and hours. I have so many more questions, but I want to honor your time as well. So thank you so much, Jadah. This has given, I know, me many follow-up questions and ideas, and I'm going to reread the book because I need to go through and really dig in. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate this, and I know that many people are going to resonate with this. So thank you for coming today.
And we got to have you back if you're open to it. I feel like we've just started with you. I feel like there's so much we can go into. So this is the first of many sessions with you to come, because we're still in the early stages of building our processes to get as many people to show up as we can, because there's so much good stuff here to unpack. So thank you for coming, and we'll coordinate another session with you. So thank you so much for your offering today.
Yeah, thank you all. I really appreciate it. And if anything that bubbles up of, like, insights or takeaways or value that you got from today, feel free to share with me through the website, or I'm hanging out on Instagram and LinkedIn. Everything's at Jadah Sellner. But yeah, I would love to continue the conversation.
Thank you for watching the Best Notary Speaker Series. Come join us on Zoom every Wednesday of the month at noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notified when new episodes are released. This speaker series is sponsored by The Best Notary, your trusted document concierge from Maui to Maine.